It's time for the big three. Three stocks, three charts, three trades. Ben Lichtenstein will take us through the charts. Here to take us through the trades, Joel Hawthorne, CEO and head trader at themorningsnapshot.com. Good morning to you both. Joel, what do you think is going on in the market today? We're seeing a pretty good sell-off. A lot of folks thought we'd be retesting some bottoms or at least going from 4,350 to 4,200. What are your thoughts?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure, Nicole. I think ultimately this market is really feeding off of a lot of technical narratives. I was tweeting the other day that the plot thickens when we think about what's going on with yields, what's going on with the dollar, also what's going on with the VIX. There was a while where the VIX just seemed like it wasn't moving, and now we've seen the VIX just continuously extend its legs higher on some of these concerns. The technical levels of what we've seen here breaking that 43.50 that you mentioned a while ago. We broke to the downside there, so there's more selling pressure. So I think a combination of all of those things is why we're seeing this weakness.
Right. All right. First up, Rivian. It's down about 6%. It's had a choppy chart. April, May, June, had its leg lower. Your thoughts on what's going on now?
Yeah, I think that was some strong resistance there near that 2487-ish area. We've since pulled back. We touched that. That's a bit of a swing high there yesterday or so, and since then we've pulled back. Down about a little over 6% today, and I think there's still weakness. We saw that some of the numbers came in as far as deliveries came in a little bit more positive, higher than expected, but overall, it's still the little brother to a company like Tesla as far as generating income. So I think that's when you see that profits are always king, and I think that's where we're seeing this weakness. So I'm a bit of a bear here.
A bit of a bear. So what are your thoughts here, Ben, as you take a look at this chart?
Well, it has been under pressure long term, but what I'm seeing is a potential bottom starting to form. You can see on the chart behind me some of the conviction to the upside. You mentioned how it'd been a little bit of a chop since June. There hasn't been a lot of follow through as of recent here, Nicole, but definitely a high conviction trade here. Again, we're talking about from the end of June, we were trading down around $13, and we saw a sharp move up into and around the $25 level. You can see again on the left side of your screen where that most of the conviction came into place. Since then, it's been a bit more sideways and rotational than what we saw initially here. Actually, let's just take a look at this look, and the process that we've seen recently has been around the $24 level. So again, you've got an upper extreme that we established back in July around 28, and then we dip back down in the August lows around 20, and perfectly right in the middle again is that mid-range here. So the pivot, and again, we're a little bit below that right now, but still very much contained within this range. As I take a step away from this, look at the hourly candles in the daily time frame. Here's where I'm starting to see some strength, and as I mentioned, a potential bottom. Notice here again, going back to when we were trading up around $100 in the beginning of 2022, you could see the very well-defined staircase type pattern to the downside, areas of value that formed at lower and lower levels. And then again, as we were forming these areas at lower and lower levels, and especially while we were balancing this summer around that $20 or $14 level, we were referencing 20. So now that we're back above that again, kind of invalidates that working assumption that we're continuing to see value form at lower and lower levels. Now, the best bear case scenario for Joel in this situation were to be a bit of a wider range to form here again around this, we'll call it $20, $23 level here, and for some weakness to ensue from there. But I wanted to point to what we're seeing here again, just kind of in this bottoming pattern, how we're holding above the 200-day moving average here. We're testing and teetering around the 50. Look at this, is a stock that's up here 20% year to date. And again, it seems to be faring pretty well here and trying to form a bit of a bottom pattern.
I see. All right. So trying to form a bottoming pattern. You're a bear on Rivian. Joel, final thoughts. It's at $22. I mean, where do you think it's headed?
I think that it definitely could see some price action a little bit lower from here. I think, from a chart perspective, I think we could even go so far as to seeing somewhere around the mid $21, 21.33s or so, somewhere in there. But for me, being a bear, I don't want to simply just chase those lows. As you know, I like to definitely collect some premium. So I'm going to sell that 24.50 call expiring next Friday, simultaneously buying a 25 strike call expiring next Friday, collecting 11 cents, break even 24 61. So in the event we do get some kind of bottoming that Ben mentioned, and we get a bounce, hopefully that resistance holds strong for me, and that 24.50 call expires worthless, and I keep the profit.
Understood. Okay. Next up, Airbnb. It has been running up some of late. What are you thinking about Airbnb today, Joel?
A bit of a bear here still as well. This is one that currently today is down over 5%, down about $7 and change. I do think there's some weakness here. I also, in the short term on a daily chart, just broke below a short-term support level there, just right around, it looks like about that 130 mark or so. So I think that there is a little bit more bearish momentum to come there. And I think this is one that is also going to be that narrative of what the overall market is doing as well. So if the overall market continues to stay weak, names like this that are already weak will definitely have some momentum to the downside. I think it'll be aggressively more selling pressure. So a bit of a bear here for the short term.
Okay, understood. He's a little bearish on Airbnb today. Ben, your thoughts?
Well, I can understand why. That 130 level, as mentioned, was the September lows. We've taken that out. But as you can see on the chart behind me, still relatively contained in terms of that bigger picture, wider range that we've been forming. And you can also see a similar pattern in terms of what we were just talking about a minute ago with that high conviction on the left side of the screen back in June into the beginning of July, where we kind of topped out around 155. And you can also see how we've been a bit more sideways rotational and basically forming balance around 146. So again, high conviction on the left side of your screen, sideways rotational process that's playing out here as a form of acceptance of that big move that we saw last summer. Simply put, no rejection as of yet. Now, as I take a look here at the longer term chart here, I'm feeding into this bullish narrative here because, again, not only are we holding within that contained range, yes, taking out that low that we saw last month, but follow through here still, again, as long as we can hold up above the August lows around 120, I think is more significant. And not only is the August low coinciding with that 120 low, or the August low, 120 coincides with the August low, but it also coincides with the balance that we were forming basically throughout the beginning of the first half of the year. We're talking from January into June, we were teetering around 120, but here you can see, again, going all the way back to the beginning of the year, that longer term trend to the upside and very well-defined migration of value. In this instance, we're looking at 5 separate areas. Let's step away from this chart. I want to show you what's going on with the 50, the 200-day moving average, kind of pinched in between right now. I think a reflection of the broader market right now in terms of some of the weakness we've seen with rates, the dollar on the rise here. But again, you can see still holding up above that longer term 200-day moving average, and RSI not really providing a lean one way or the other. What I'm seeing here is, again, a medium to intermediate term strength here in a longer term uptrend market here. So yeah, I can see some of that recent weakness here, and the bulls didn't want to see it take out 130 here, but as long as we hold up above 120, this one's still in an uptrend.
Yeah, right now 129.21, Joel. Thank you for that, Ben. Joel, your final thoughts here on Airbnb?
Definitely, that 120-ish area that Ben mentions is definitely something that's on my radar. That's why I'm going to be selling some 141 calls that expire October 13th, buying the 142 call simultaneously as well, collecting a credit of about 14 cents. Break even's 141.14. So as you can see there, it gives me plenty of room because we're trading 129, and this goes out for about 2 weeks.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Coinbase, which got a little boost yesterday on some news from abroad, and so did Bitcoin for that matter. But again, today with a down arrow and certainly well off the recent highs that we saw in late summer. Where do you think Coinbase is headed, Joel?
I think the pain train is there for Coinbase as well, too. I think there's going to be some more weakness there in a name like that. I know there will be some volatility, of course, just because of just the narrative around some of the cryptocurrencies and things of that nature. But as we look currently here, we're trading 72, very close to that 70-ish level. And if we get anywhere near that, because in the event that markets are weak and we come in and obviously we see any kind of overnight action to the downside, we break that 70, I think there's going to be definitely some momentum to the downside that can pull this name lower. So I'm a bit of a bear here as well for the short term also.
Yeah. So feeling bearish, not really seeing a lot of optimism today, Joel. Ben, your thoughts on Coinbase today?
Nicole, this is one we can agree on here. I see weakness not only on the intermediate, more short term, but also on the longer term, the trend to the downside on the daily candles, which we'll get into in a second. But first and foremost, much like the other two names that we looked at, you can see high conviction on the left side of your screen. But in this instance, after topping out around 114, you can see how we've kind of just been leaking lower, right back into the middle of the range that we've been in, going all the way back to June of this year. And I just want to show you basically below the pivot right now as well. As I take a look here, upper extreme, pretty well defined. We'll call it 145. You've got a lower extreme around 45. And then again, do the math, pretty basic. Here we are teetering just around and below 80. Now, not only are we seeing a little bit of weakness here on this intermediate time frame, but also take a look here what's going on in the longer term. In this instance, it's a pretty well-defined trend environment to the downside. You can see the areas of consolidation that I look for where the market pauses. And then again, you go from that horizontal phase, that overlapping rotational phase. You see it's very well-defined here around 187. And then look at this high conviction to the downside, red arrows, lower lows, lower highs. That's energy. That's big selling coming into play in April and May. And then you can see again how we've transitioned into this more rotational area around 60. So now in terms of that reference point, that prior area, it's quite a ways up to look at 187, right? So I would kind of focus on this pause that we saw. If you remember back in the beginning of April, that was around 100, 120. I think that's a key area. As you can see, we topped out twice and failed to get above that area. So you can see the trend to the downside. You can see a couple areas of resistance here. In this instance, I think it's pretty well defined. No rejection this lower level, and value continues to establish itself at lower and lower levels in shares of COIN.
Yeah, so I mean, basically at those points, you're showing those points, it just can't break out past any of those points, past that $100 basically. So what do you think here, Joel? Last thought.
Exactly. I agree with Ben wholeheartedly on this, on the chart there. Definitely a bear. Selling those 85 calls, simultaneously buying an 86 call, both expire October 20th. Collect a credit of about 15 cents, break even 85.15. Again, if we get another pop like we did here, or we saw yesterday, that 85 call up there, I'm anticipating should find some short-term resistance, expire worthless, and I potentially keep the premium that I'm collecting. But again, like Ben mentioned, definitely the downward trend that we see is very clear to me on the chart, and that's why I want to follow the trend here.
Yeah. All right, great to see you both for the big three today. We had Rivian, Airbnb, and Coinbase. Joel Hawthorne, themorningsnapshot.com, and our own Ben Lichtenstein there on the charts. Thank you both very much.